Hello and welcome for China Solved. I'm Andrew Hubert, and this is Know Your Counterparty. Did Xi Jinping just get punked at the G20? The U.S. side is integrating three categories of issues into a single conflict. The first of, and these are my categories, so people will have different opinions, but in my view, there's the trade leg of the tripod. There's the security, cyber, IP/legal leg of the tripod, and then there's military. And over the weekend, we got a little bit more information about how this trade negotiation is cross-wired. The arrest of HuaWei's Meng WanZhou is likely to affect trade negotiations. I think it's going to affect trade negotiations. But she's mostly being accused of security and legal crimes, we think. We're still not 100% sure. So the U.S. has been saying these are on separate tracks, but in China, this is going to be viewed as an escalation on par with hostage taking, which the Chinese have seen before. Business kidnappings are not unknown in China, and that's pretty much how this one is being viewed. So the arrest of Meng WanZhou is likely to first have a mildly positive effect on the negotiation for the U.S. The Chinese are likely to take it a little bit more seriously and make some concessions in order to clear that 90-day hurdle. But later, this is going to have a very negative effect on trade negotiations. What are we talking about today? The trust deficit. If Trump knew, if Trump didn't know. The trust gap. Does it matter? The baseline of trust is getting lower, and it's reaching a point where the other side's pledges are becoming meaningless. You won't surrender if you believe it means 100% loss for you. You'll keep fighting till the bitter end. And that's the difference between a negotiated settlement and a fight to the death existential battle, or in other words, a Cold War. In a Cold War, you don't think there's any point in compromising because you don't think the other side's going to honor a compromise. Now, in the United States, we've been taking a very sanguine view of the arrest, but in China, it's viewed as an escalation. The decision makers in Beijing's Zhongnanhai, which is like Capitol Hill in Washington, the decision makers in Beijing are old, they are paranoid, and they're deeply, deeply suspicious. And there are some that feel that China is being too conciliatory to the West now. So the people who are against compromise have been validated by the arrest. The arrest of HuaWei's Meng WanZhou is taking place pretty much as Trump and Xi were shaking hands. And that makes the U.S. seem super aggressive. It is viewed as an escalation. But it also gives Trump this supervillain vibe, where he's seen as really cold and sort of evil. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but that does set us up as very aggressive one-off negotiators that really don't have to worry too much about how other people feel about us. Partners need to worry about that. The baseline was shifted over the weekend, and the new baseline that's being tested either by Trump or by the Bolton, Navarro, Lighthizer triad, or by the fates themselves. But the new baseline being tested is that there are no circumstances where we want to be in a partnership with China. There are no circumstances where we will trust their word. And that is becoming the new normal, which is very different from the old normal that doing business and getting quality and getting compliance were very difficult but possible. And that's probably if you're listening to this, that's probably been your baseline assumption up until recently. And that's what's changing. And you don't want to get left behind that shift. So as the trust deficit widens, Chinese analysts, your counterparts in China, are downgrading the likelihood of success and lowering their view of the BATNA, the best alternative to no agreement. The worst case scenario is getting worse because now we're adding arrests and kidnapping to the mix. And in China, this is being viewed as an escalation. Even though you are not escalating your negotiations with your Chinese counterparts, this is going to definitely color the way he feels and the assessments he makes about you. So the Chinese are likely to be trying to answer one question right now. Did Trump know or did he not know? If Trump knew, the aggressive, rapacious madman that's smiling and shaking hands across the table while he's taking hostages is both evil and chilling, Not that there's anything wrong with that. So this fits with one of the original profiles of Donald Trump as the cold-hearted businessman. This raises the chance of a short-term win for the U.S., but increases the long-term costs for everyone. And that also fits with the Donald Trump profile, that this is exactly the kind of thing he does. All he wants is a win. So the Chinese are girding for war. They may feel that they are going up against a real adversary. And what if Trump really didn't know? How would the Chinese explain that? Well, they would see three possibilities. The first is just bad luck. It's just a colossal, coincidental screw-up that friends can laugh off, but enemies might go to war over. The Chinese will downplay this for now, but this one's going on the list of issues to be dealt with later. The second possibility is that Trump is weak, either mentally or organizationally. Remember, Bolton was sitting 2 seats down from him during the dinner, so there's no way a Chinese leader would be sitting 4 feet away from key information and not know it. And the third thing the Chinese might be thinking is a palace coup. This feels a little palace coup-like if Trump really didn't know the information and he was going to be embarrassed by it later. But that's a Chinese worldview. That doesn't work in the U.S. But that doesn't mean the Chinese don't feel that something funny is going on behind the scenes. So even though they might be wrong about a palace coup, they will see someone else's hand in this potentially. In general, American tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists got nothing on the old guard Chinese communists. Bottom line, the Cold War has taken one more step towards reality this weekend, as the Chinese side will never be 100% sure that Trump himself didn't order the escalation of this conflict. For them, the alternative, that Trump is either grossly incompetent or that a successful palace coup is going on right beneath his nose, is much, much worse. They would prefer to deal with a madman. They know how to do that. But unfortunately, this bakes a central misunderstanding into the mix, and it is a great recipe for cross-cultural conflict. You can expect a lot of short-term concessions and pleasant photo ops in the short term, but clandestine war and an out-and-out tech crusade in China is going to be going on just out of sight. Your discussions with Chinese counterparts should look at the March 1st tariff trigger and include talks of non-Chinese production. Your Chinese counterpart probably has factories in Myanmar, in Cambodia, in Laos, in Vietnam, and you need to start discussing that as an important negotiating variable. Thanks very much for trying to solve. This has been Andrew Hubert. Please, if you found this useful, subscribe and like on YouTube, on LinkedIn, join the China Solved group. And some additional resources you might find helpful. The Fragile Bridge talks about conflict management in Chinese business. And 10 Common Chinese Negotiating Mistakes talks about what can go wrong in a negotiation. Thanks very much. I'll talk to you again soon.